There's a plant that was once considered such a powerful weapon. It was planted around graves to protect the dead. And today, it sits quietly in homes around the world, unassuming, unkillable, allegedly, and unmoving. I'm Megan Brame, and on this episode of The History of Plants, we're untangling the story of Dracaena trifasciata. The Latin name means three-banded dragon, but you probably know it as the snake plant, or mother-in-law's tongue, St. George's sword, or maybe one of its other many aliases. Whatever you call it, this plant is so stubbornly resilient that it has become a global symbol of survival, secrecy, and reinvention. From ancestral shrines to government waiting rooms, it's lived many lives. But long before it was cleaning your air, or not, we'll get to that, the snake plant was a sacred protector. Our story doesn't start on Pinterest, IKEA, or your mom's living room in the 80s. To be entirely honest, we're not sure when the story starts at all. The snake plant, Dracaena trifasciata, is a botanical holdover from a much older time. It belongs to the asparagus family, a group of plants that first emerged during the mid-Cretaceous period about 100 million years ago. While there's no known fossil record, we do know it's native to the dry, rocky landscapes of West Africa, stretching from Nigeria to the Congo, considered to be some of the harshest growing conditions on Earth, which may be why we currently have no fossil record for it. What we do know is that this brutal climate made it the super resilient plant we know today. Okay, so here's one of my snake plants. This guy's about 10 years old, and this is the original cutting that I got from somebody. If you look, you can see that its leaves are kind of thick and fleshy. This adaptation works similarly to the way succulent leaves do, conserving water so that the plant can withstand extreme periods of drought. While its vertical growth adaptation isn't uncommon, I mean, we've covered climbers like Monstera deliciosa before, it's pretty distinct in the snake plant and is believed to be a practical evolutionary advantage that helps limit sun exposure, resist wind damage, and conserve water. See you later, buddy. One of its key survival tools is crassulation acid metabolism, or CAM photosynthesis, a rare adaptation found only in about 10% of known species. CAM lets the snake plant breathe at night instead of during the day, reducing water loss in the scorching African heat. Ethnobotanical studies in Nigeria, Benin, and Ghana document centuries of oral traditions linking the snake plant to boundary-setting rituals, funerary rites, and spiritual protection. The plant is especially sacred to Obatala, the Orisha of wisdom and purity, and is used in rituals to seek balance, peace, and guidance. It's also linked to more forceful divine figures, namely Ogun, the Orisha of iron, war, and justice. In ceremonies, the plant's blade-like structure evokes Ogun's forge and weaponry, a living representation of defense and action. It's also associated with Oya, the Orisha of wind, storms, and the threshold between life and death. Since Oya governs both transformation and cemetery gates, the snake plant represents the strength to endure the transition and chaos. During funerals, leaves are placed around grave sites, forming a protective boundary as a way to safeguard the soul's journey and prevent malevolent spirits from crossing into sacred space. Among the Igbo people, the plant is also revered as a symbol of ancestral strength and spiritual endurance. To them, who call it Ubube, which means glory or awe-inspiring majesty, the plant's ability to survive in forgotten corners without light or care is seen as a kind of metaphor for cultural memory, lineage, and the quiet power of traditions that refuse to die. This reverence wasn't just confined to the African continent. As West African spiritual practices spread through the transatlantic slave trade, so did the snake plant. In Vodun, often known in the West as voodoo, and other Santeria and Afro-Caribbean syncretic religions, the plant plays an ongoing role in purification rituals, household boundary spells, and ceremonial offerings. Its upright, spear-like leaves are used to mark sacred space, create spiritual protection, and represent unbroken ancestral lines. But in the West, few of those cultural meanings survived translation. Instead, the plant picked up a new string of names and symbolisms. Some sources credit Peter Simon Pallas, a German botanist, with its introduction into the Western world, but that was in 1784, nearly 30 years after it had already landed in Europe. Maybe he was late to the party, maybe he procrastinated publishing his work, or maybe he just wanted credit. Who can say? Regardless, when it was first brought to Carl Linnaeus in 1753, it was incorrectly grouped with aloes thanks to its thick, water-retaining leaves. In 1794, Linnaeus' student Carl Peter Thunberg reclassified it under the newly created Sansevieria, named after Raimondo de Sangro, Prince of San Severo, an eccentric Italian nobleman known for his scientific obsessions and crazy occult experiments. If you find any good YouTube videos on him, let me know. That taxonomic error stuck around for over 200 years. But in 2014, scientists Pei-Lun Liu and Clifford Morden found sufficient evidence to suggest Sansevieria and Dracaena share a common ancestor, warranting their consideration as one and the same. And in 2017, DNA sequencing at Kew Gardens finally placed our snake plant squarely within the Dracaena family, alongside dragon trees and corn plants. Hey, by the way, if this feels like the kind of history class you would have actually stayed awake for, subscribe and stick around because new episodes pop up every other week. But that misnaming didn't stop at the genus. In English-speaking countries, Dracaena trifasciata is still best known as snake plant, a name inspired more by its look than its biological accuracy. Although I did see a video once where there were mambas living in snake plants in South Africa. Was that right? Some terrifying venomous snake was living in someone's snake plants. I guess someone told the snake its name. It's also called mother-in-law's tongue, and while we don't know who coined that or when, it's believed to be a mid-century nickname that references the plant's sharp, pointed leaves in a not-so-subtle dig at the supposed sharp tongue in-laws. My mother-in-law, by the way, is awesome. Everyone say hi to Kathy. She's watching. In Brazil, the plant is revered as Espada de São Jorge, or St. George's sword, referencing the Christian saint who is said to have slayed a dragon. In Candomblé and Umbanda, which are Afro-Brazilian religions shaped by Yoruba and Bantu traditions, those upright sword-like leaves are seen as protective and are used in spiritual defense rituals and blessings. In colonial fiber trade records and earlier industrial catalogs, it appears under the name Viper's bowstring hemp, a nod to its tough leaf fibers, which were used historically to make ropes, fishing line, and bowstrings in various parts across Africa, India, and Southeast Asia. One plant, many names, some reverent, some dismissive, and some just plain inaccurate. And just when it seemed like all of its secrets had been revealed, the 20th century gave the snake plant a new role. Long before it became a minimalist design icon, the snake plant had already made its way into European drawing rooms with a kind of like quiet confidence. By the mid-1800s, when the Victorian era was in full swing, it was well established in homes and botanical gardens. Unlike its leafy counterpart, the parlor palm, which was all about lush fronds and exotic flair, the snake plant appeal was more understated, upright, architectural, and remarkably tolerant of dim, sooty interiors. In a time when most houseplants died from coal smoke and inconsistent watering, this one refused to wither. Its understated appeal gained new traction in the post-war 20th century as design sensibilities shifted from the maximalism and decadence of the Victorian and Art Deco eras to modernism and mid-century minimalism. Architects, decorators, and retailers all saw in the snake plant a kind of living sculpture, low maintenance, clean lines, and perfectly suited for modernist ideals. It was a shapeshifter, fitting in both high-end decor settings and rustic domesticity, notably with a blink it and you'll miss it cameo on the porch in Grant Wood's 1930 painting American Gothic. But what looked like aesthetic success was only part of the story. In Cold War-era Europe and the US, it found a new niche, becoming a background staple in, of all places, government procurement catalogs, used to accent embassies, consulates, and government buildings. Officially, it was just another interior plant, but unofficially, its presence was in very serious buildings, which made it an aesthetic shorthand for discretion. A plant once used to mark sacred boundaries was now decorating liminal spaces. It flanked doors, guarded foyers, and stood quietly beside filing cabinets. Unkillable, unyielding, undeterred. By the 1980s, the snake plant had reached near ubiquity. You could find it in hospital corridors, in break rooms, and college dorms. It was cheap, it was mass-produced, and, thanks to its canned photosynthesis, able to thrive even under harsh fluorescent lighting. But its ubiquity came with a price, invisibility. The plant was so common, so reliable, that no one really noticed it anymore. That is, until one very unexpected agency did take notice, and they were about to change everything. In the late 1980s, a plucky little government agency known as the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, aka NASA, had a problem. air pollution to be exact. NASA at the time was planning long-duration space missions and permanent orbital habitats like the ISS, which sounds amazing and, let's be honest, totally is amazing. However, that mandate left NASA's engineers and biologists all asking the same uncomfortable question. In a sealed metal capsule hurtling through space, how exactly are we supposed to breathe? The issue was volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, things like formaldehyde, benzene, and trichloroethylene. These chemicals leach out of carpets, paints, adhesive, insulation, basically everything that makes up a modern building or spacecraft. And in places with no windows or airflow and no soil-based ecosystems, they can build up fast. At low levels, VOCs cause headaches, nausea, dizziness, and eye irritation, all not ideal when you're operating delicate little instruments hundreds or even thousands of miles from Earth. But in higher concentrations or with long-term exposure, they've been linked to liver damage, kidney dysfunction, nervous system disorders, and cancer. NASA needed a solution, so a team led by scientist Dr. B.C. Wolverton partnered with the Associated Landscape Contractors of America to come up with a strange but ultimately reasonable hypothesis. What if common houseplants could filter toxic compounds out of the air, even in space? What followed was the now famous 1989 NASA Clean Air Study. Once published, the media went wild with it, and they still do to this day. NASA approved plants to purify your home. 12 NASA approved plants that actually improve air quality. NASA compiles lists of best plants to clean indoor air. Suddenly, you couldn't walk into a plant shop or browse a blog without seeing claims that snake plants clean the air. Even NASA's own outreach materials helped blur the line. Articles like the 2019 NASA Plant Research Offers a Breath of Fresh Air and a similar 2025 update both appear on the NASA spin-off website, but neither one clarifies the thing that everyone gets wrong about this study. So let's set the record straight. The 1989 study is real. You can actually still read it on NASA's website today. I link all of my sources in the pinned comment. Go check it out. In it, researchers placed common houseplants, including our snake plant, inside sealed plexiglass chambers, then introduced individual pollutants like formaldehyde and benzene. No airflow, no external soil contact, one chamber, one plant, one chemical at a time. Under those tightly controlled lab conditions, Dracaena trifasciata showed limited ability to reduce certain toxins, thanks in part to microbial activity in the root zone. Alongside species like peace lily and pothos, it made the short list. In no way did the study say you should buy a plant to purify your apartment. In fact, a 2020 study published in the Journal of Exposure Scientists and Environmental Epidemiology tested these claims in real homes and offices, and they found little to no VOC reduction in ventilated environments, or that you would need as many as 1,000 plants per square meter of floor space. I have got over 250 plants around my home, with most of them in these cabinets, so just imagine 4xing this. Even Dr. Wolverton himself later clarified that you'd need multiple medium-sized plants per 100 square feet to replicate the results at home. But that didn't matter. The myth had legs. Now, I want to stop here and say that despite newer studies essentially debunking theirs, NASA has never officially recanted the 1989 study, because they didn't need to, really. It's not their fault we don't understand nuance and just skim headlines. Also, despite what Pinterest or TikTok may suggest, NASA has never claimed that 1 or 2 houseplants can dramatically improve indoor air quality in a well-ventilated home. And since I have a soft spot for NASA, I want to clarify that those aforementioned recent NASA articles were published on their spin-off outreach site. They're not peer-reviewed science updates and are not published on the official main research site. It's kind of like their PR marketing place. From a marketing perspective, though, that study was pure gold. They were science-backed health heroes, and they were sold by the thousands. By the turn of the 21st century, the snake plant had been fully reinvented, becoming a fixture in wellness culture, influencer interiors, and urban apartments plastered with hashtags like #PlantParent. But even then, the health hero transformation wasn't over yet. In the early 2010s, as green wellness trends and the natural remedy market exploded, researchers began digging into the chemical profile of Dracaena trifasciata to understand what else it could do. and they found some pretty interesting details. Its essential oil contains a variety of bioactive compounds, most notably saponins, alkaloids, and flavonoids. Lab studies have shown mild antibacterial and antifungal effects under controlled conditions, particularly against common pathogens like E. coli and Candida albicans. More recent studies have gone even further. A 2024 study found cytotoxic activity against certain human cancer cell lines. Another study observed anti-inflammatory and blood sugar regulating effects in rats. There's even mounting evidence that supports some of its historical use in folk medicine. A 2009 study published in the African Journal of Traditional, Complementary, and Alternative Medicines confirmed that snake plant extracts have broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity, validating part of its long-standing use in spiritual and physical cleansing rituals. Now, are these compounds unique to the snake plant? Not really. Saponins and alkaloids appear in dozens of other plants, some in much higher concentrations. Marketers didn't care. Products claiming snake plant extract as a detoxifying or anti-inflammatory miracle started showing up in skincare, supplements, and even air sprays. You could say it became the snake oil of snake plants. But here's the twist. Unlike 19th century con artists who sold fake tonics out of wagons, the snake plant's benefit to us isn't one of total fiction. It's just complicated because while it's definitely been overhyped, it's also one of the most resilient, adaptable, and symbolic plants ever domesticated. It's just that we keep trying to make it more healing, more scientific, more profitable, more content-friendly. It has been misnamed, miscategorized, and misrepresented, but somehow it never stopped growing. And that brings us to today, where a new kind of snake plant trend is emerging, one that's less about style and more about story. For most of the 20th century, the snake plant was so common it practically vanished into the background. The legacy has a funny way of catching up, especially for a plant that's been quietly adapting for millennia. Take a closer look at Hollywood. Snake plants and their cousins appear everywhere once you start noticing, quietly flanking furniture in Groundhog Day, Being John Malkovich, Blue Velvet, Duck Soup, and more. You can even find them in The Sims 4 and fan mods. They're the ultimate set piece, minimal effort, maximum aesthetics. And while we may not be placing ours around grave sites today, its symbolic weight hasn't gone away. In South Korea, potted snake plants are often given as gifts when someone opens a new business, meant to bring luck, prosperity, and resilience. In modern feng shui, the plant is placed in strategic corners of homes and offices to absorb negative energy or channel protective qi. And in interior design circles, it's still seen as the minimalist plant of choice, rigid, sculptural, and resilient. That's the thing about this plant. It doesn't beg for attention. It just adapts, waiting and letting the world catch up. We've called it the sword of saints, the sharp tongue of in-laws, the hemp of vipers. We've used it to ward off evil, to mark sacred ground, to clean our air, to decorate dentist's office, and to sell wellness in a bottle. And through all of that, it never stopped doing what it does best. Surviving. And maybe that's the real story. Not that the snake plant was ever particularly mysterious or magical or even misunderstood, but that it let us believe it was, because that's how you endure throughout every era without ever needing to change who you are. You stay still and let others do the work to figure it out. Brilliant. I'm Megan Brame. Thank you for joining me on another episode of History of Plants. Jump into the commentary episode on Patreon to see what didn't make the final cut, or if you're ready to meet the ancient grass that rewired civilization and still decides what you're having for dinner, check out The Wild History of Corn. Until next time, greenies, stay curious and don't forget to flourish.